Yeah, we're back. We are back. We are alive. It has been nearly 2.5 weeks. I apologize for nothing, okay? But just be happy because we're happy. We're back. Silly Wales is back. Anyway, this is a mental health podcast. We discuss things that might be a little bit on the touchy side and sensitive side. So if this is going to be a bit of an issue, it's fine. You can take a virtual step away. If you're out in public, you don't want to take a literal step away. You might step into something. That's not good. But there's other podcasts you can listen to. I'm going to recommend one at the end of this episode, okay? This podcast, however, still is for everyone, but it might not be for you. And Joe here isn't going to hunt you down, are you?
No, we're humpback.
Like, you know, we're not.
If I'm not worth being killed for that alone, then I can't really feel, I can't really feel that bad for anyone who doesn't want to listen. So it's all fair.
So, to our committed listeners.
Yes.
All 15 to 45 of you.
Shocking.
We've been gone. And Joe, do you want to explain why we've been gone, actually?
Yeah. I mean, I've not been in a great way. And there's a lot of sort of struggle with communicating as a result of that. But that's really the main reason beyond, like, I don't know, the fact that we planned to go on holiday together and all this sort of stuff. So, but the major thing has been, like I've been struggling to. I struggled to find like anything to be interested in or to love or to do well with for a period of time, and I'm on a path to recovery after that, which has been, I think, fully in the works for about like 4 days, 5 days, something to that effect. So yeah, sometimes this happens. It is really funny, like just in the history of this series, because last year I think we started out with it being in this very like kind of, oh yeah, like we have mental health issues, stuff, etc. And then there was a period of time where I just like didn't feel like I didn't really have like any problems, and then it just sort of went away, and it was like, oh, this is like the mood of this has changed almost as a result, like strictly like the way I think it was represented, like the show ended up being represented, because I just, at least from my perspective, wasn't like providing any of that kind of like angst or issues or anything like that. And then now it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm just like this, I'm helping to kill the podcast due to these issues by just like not turning up and not engaging around it. So yeah, it's life gets like this sometimes, and there is a need for improvement in many areas, and truly when you have really good friends, it's all possible. It makes it significantly easier than if you didn't, and that's an understatement of like a magnitude of like 1,000 of how much easier it is.
Like, my favorite thing of all of this is you sent me a big ass message on Discord, and you send these messages a lot when like you disappear for a few days or whatever.
I thought that was a particularly good one, but never mind.
That's what I'm getting to here. Okay, it was particularly good because the ending line is fucking cold. Okay, and it's like, I don't want like a 19-year-old guy from I don't know, random country to make a TikTok edit over this. And he's gonna put like a guy from I don't know, Peaky Blinders in it and be like dun 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 with that crazy music and shit. Okay, but like, and I quote Joe. I don't want these things to die, so I'm sorry for helping take part in their murder. That is cold, okay? That is literally like, my hands cause so much damage. Like,
It's funny when you write things like that and you just don't feel that that's the energy you're giving, and then I hear it back and I'm like, oh, that really does sound that sounded like I was trying to say something poignant and really specific, but no, I just
Like
sort of
so many
stumbled into
action
it.
heroes can say that. Like, oh my, like do you know, like not even like a psychological thriller, like villain. Have
Mm.
you ever seen Jessica Jones?
No, not in its fullness. No, I really should
Pretty
actually
much.
because
Evil
David
David.
Tennant's
We
in
did
it.
say that this podcast is Reginald D. Hunter and David Tennant's sons.
Yeah, yeah.
Like David Tennant's a bad guy in
I love
Jessica
bad
Jones.
David Tennant. Yeah.
Okay, like that's what he would say. You know, as he's washing his hands. Okay, like you know, Jesus, I don't want these things to die, so I'm sorry for helping to take part in their murder. Jeez, like I didn't want to have to end this, but I'm still having to end it. Oh,
To humble it a little bit, I actually do think that sentiment is a very real sentiment when you start looking in, like when you start talking about like mental health related things, of just that feeling of like the damage you're causing to yourself, but you are incapable of like reacting to it correctly.
exactly. That's why it's so good.
Yeah,
Because
it's like
it's
like generational trauma.
yeah, it's like the idea of like self-sabotage and why we do things. Like, you know, why do I know I should be going to the gym, but I'm not. And I'm letting these things happen. And I have the ability and the will to stop these things from happening, but I'm still not stopping these things from happening. Jesus, man. Blood clot. Like, yeah. Anyway. We do segments on this show, and we're going to go into one now. We discuss the news in terms of mental health. And we normally do like two, sometimes three of these, but we're only going to do just one. Because one, we get to focus in on and have a bit more detail on it. And two, just for the sake of time, guys, you know, just for the sake of time. So now it is time for mental health this week. So, mental health this week, we have one singular story, and we are going to discuss the ongoing Lampard Inquiry. Now, this is going to take forever to figure out. We're not going to get a full, conclusive report on it done until 2027. But this could take a very long time. But the purpose of the Lampard Inquiry is to investigate mental health inpatient deaths in Essex, pretty much between the years of 2000. Wait, I've lost it all. Wait, I had it all right in front of me. It just disappeared. What's going on here?
Definitely disappeared.
But yeah, a 10-year. I think it's between a 10-year spell between 2000 and 2023.
Yes, 2023. Yeah.
Yes, good. Thank you. Everything's linked in the description of the episode of the podcast. And the reason why this is something that reached out to me is not just because, it's mental health and we should discuss this. No, it's the idea of they discussed what they called compassion fatigue. So the idea that they're not really emotionally connected to the patients that they're tending to and treating. And there's a culture of fear, so we don't get, so members of staff from NHS branches, be it nurses, doctors, surgeons, don't want to get blamed for things, so then they end up skirting the rules, and there's more of a fear to be held responsible for things you didn't do, or maybe you did do under pressure, rather than actually showing the right amount of care and empathy for the patients. This is something that I think we're all experiencing now, and it comes down to things like with GP surgery, and you have 20-minute limits for doctor's appointments because there's so many people for doctors to see, and there's only so much time. So in order to guarantee everyone gets seen, there's a limit of 20 minutes. And in some cases, 15 minutes. And in some cases, you don't get to see a GP. They phone you. So we lose those connections that we build with people we should probably trust. Like, I remember for a lot of forms when I was younger, the GP surgery is one of the things that you put down. And a lot of people put their GP as a trusted person to reach out to. It's crazy now that we don't have that connection. Like my last GP surgery, I didn't have a set GP, and at this surgery I'm at now, a new one, I still don't have a set GP. But the difference is that the GPs at the new one are better. You know, they take the time to care, they take the time to look after you and to point you in the right direction, and they actually work to do that, as opposed to my old GP, in which a lot of it was just like the receptionists were the main problem, really. Because you phone them up and they'd be like, "What's wrong with you?" I was like, "I don't know. I'm calling you, you fucking dumb cunt." Like, you know, and they never had that. They provide a barrier to access the information that you need. Like, if I need to see a doctor, because I'm calling you, I need to see a doctor. I don't want to be examined over the phone by a receptionist. And if a doctor wants to call me back, then sure. And that was a big problem I had with my GP. So I ended up leaving. And receptionists aren't supposed to be, well, they can be, but they're not supposed to be the most empathetic people anyway. But that's the first people you meet or interact with when you're trying to get a doctor's appointment. And then in that 20-minute doctor's appointment, it's the time constraint, the pressure to actually find a problem and then deal with the problem. And if you can't, you have to book up a follow-up appointment again. And it's just a lot of faff. Now, you can't marry the good idea and the bad ideas together. No. Reality, all it comes down to the fact that things are very soulless because there's a capitalistic need to speed things up. So we end up losing the emotional capacity because everyone's run down and tired and overworked. So we lose the emotional capacity to truly care about the patients that we're serving. It's a wild thing. Anyway, sorry, Joe.
Oh, no. I mean, there's... I think we talked about this before, about the whole GP thing, or the receptionist thing. My brother worked as a receptionist, so I got to hear like a few of the... I got to experience some of the, some of the sort of inside information about how something's run, what it's like to even interact with like GP doctors as well, and things like that. And also just I gained a lesson in learning of how GPs work fundamentally, like as a system. They don't quite work the same as other aspects of the NHS because they are sort of in and of themselves still private enterprises. But to echo at least some of what you talk about, I think that there is from the specifically like a GP sector of all of this. It's and to be fair, this will naturally kind of like echo to other areas, which is that effectively when you have lots and lots of people to take care of without the which by the way, I think looking after lots of people isn't necessarily an issue, but looking after a lot of people where you are not necessarily in the capacity to be able to follow up and engage with those people compassionately, I think the actual limitation of it makes things harder, because it's not just a case of, again, coming back to sort of compassion fatigue and so on. I think that there's two versions of this that exist. The one of the versions is like the giving and the giving and the giving of sort of emotional energy, if you will, like, that compassion to other people and not really receiving enough back, and you're effectively self-sacrificing and doing so, and that has like detrimental consequences. I know people in my life who I would describe in this way, or have like remnants of it, or you can see it in the way that they very much like are choosing to put their energy here, and whether they need to or not necessarily is kind of up in the air, but like and it's true that they genuinely do care and they are interested, but it's a negative thing for them to some extent, which they have to find ways to cope with. Or the other version, which is that you're actually not allowed to be able to use that side of you. And then I think that changes the nature of how you can even relate to others, right? Like I've been to the GP more recently because of mental health related stuff. And, my actual attempt to try and get this sorted in some way and to get support. And I'll just say, even though I was perfectly happy with my experience, I remember the first time I went, I cried a lot. And, as I was crying and finding it difficult to say something, she said to me, like, can I start writing up this on a report for you? Like, can I start writing this up while you're getting your thoughts together? And I didn't take that in a negative way when she said it, but I was hyper aware of the sort of implication that had, which was like, even I was in that moment while in this like very sad state, explaining how there are lots of issues that I've had and all of this stuff. That I was on a time limit, but not like a kind of like, time limit going, oh, it's okay, like, we'll give you like 40 minutes or something. It's like, no, I mean, you kind of do want to be getting out of there, between 20 and 30 minutes, like, despite the moment that this needs, like the kind of sitting on this needs, like the feeling that there needs to be some level of in-depth understanding of what's happening. And it's like I would, given the situation you're in, and I know you're going to be here, like, do you mind if I literally just kind of like make sure that I don't have to kick you out earlier, if that makes sense? Like, the implication of that being there. And I think that the effect that has, and ultimately, like, that's what she had to do. And that's what lots of people in these services have to do. There's way too much put on everyone. And they aren't, and in many of these cases, they're not given the opportunity to be able to follow up and do what needs to be done in the moment for this patient, because there's another patient they got to see, or because actually in certain cases there's just extreme limitations on what the service even provides or allows for, or even like the training or teaching of certain staff means that there are limitations on what they can literally do, like as a staff member, and what is the kind of policy of what that staff role should be doing. And all of that, like, I think has a huge impact on this whole discussion, because I think, especially if you, this would be true if you take this away from a GP, if you take this to, hospitals, or I don't know if this inquiry looks into like asylums and other sorts of things, but similar ideas.
Any
care
inpatient.
homes. Yeah, any inpatients. So that there is this, that clearly, like, when you start loading up and stacking up the on people and making them making them perform more duties or roles and things like that. And this is me now just explaining that I think that this is a trend that the NHS has had to deal with, like, the cuts and other sorts of things. And I have people I've spoken to who vouch for these things, or have told me of these things, that I think leads to this inability to act in the best way, like, qualitatively speaking, the incapacity to do so, whether by an attrition and just wearing down, or by a general, like, kind of chokehold of, like, what is even physically possible for you to do. Like, what can you actively do, like, in any moment? That I think structurally means that which structurally I think affects people in a really bad way. And structurally, it's the wrong word. Like, mentally, like, how people are able to deal with this, I think, is kind of a necessary feature of that structural choice, that structural decision of how things are going to be run. Necessarily means that people cannot give everything to it, and they can't even give part of everything to it without experiencing some real detrimental effects potentially from doing so. And as a kind of second to this, if you are someone who wants to provide empathy, who wants to provide compassion to people, then I think a kind of system that is run this way and makes things difficult, and forces people to have to engage like this, will actually end up reinforcing that staff members, or any just person, let's say, who goes into a career or job like this, who actually isn't interested in providing that kind of empathy or compassion, are actually selected for more. You know, it's like evolution. It's like there's a bias towards certain kinds of things. And if you create an environment in which actually the kinds of people who will do best in this environment are people who, you know, actively are not interested in engaging, because for them, they don't have to spend the social energy or you know, dealing with the fallout from all of it. I think you're choosing the kind of system you want to create, because inevitably we know that you have to have like high standards. I think that's the ultimate. That's the major point about this, is that regardless of what this finds, it's necessary. It is entirely necessary that we have high standards for medical things, much in the way that I would about police force and other areas of real necessity and safety and security. But just because that's the case, we need, if we want to have high standards, then we need to give the people the ability to act within that high standard, to reach that. And it just doesn't seem possible with the as you said, the kind of drive and trend of trying to make greater profit out of something like this, or to I now have connections of people who work in police force, for example, and I know how difficult it is for them to deal with all of the things that need to be dealt with. And I work in retail, so I know the experience of dealing with the police from a retail perspective when it comes to, like, you know, what can be done about this individual who acts this way or does this or does that. Like, you know, forget about the like corporations and companies themselves, just thinking about the actual like staff members and their safety and security. Like, why is it that the you know, this is an issue, and it's ultimately across the board this is a problem, and I don't even for a second think that it's to me, this compassion fatigue discussion is like a much points to a larger narrative problem and structural issue, I think, that occurs in lots of different services effectively, is what I'm trying to come out of this with saying, and being my like specific take on ultimately what the problem is. That, like, yes, we don't want a culture of fear, but we need a culture of high standard, and that's both of those things are true.
Yeah, it feels like we have a culture of, well, the culture of fear means that the culture of fear to maintain high standards isn't there. It's a culture of fear to just maintain something. So it's like, and I'm not saying that we need a culture of fear to maintain high standards. I think, as you said, we need just high standards. And when you're overworked, this all goes back around to the root cause, really. It comes down to like finances and capitalism and things like that, of course, you know. But you can't say this stuff because it's all too woke or whatever. But the reality is, if people are overworked, if people are stressed out, as we said off air, it's not going to work. It's not going to work out, mate. And you mentioned that, like, compassion fatigue is something that you think is on the rise in general. It is, because, do you know, especially in a place like London, like, your experiences in Worcester might be different, Joe, but service workers tend to be a lot colder now in London. So people who work in, I don't know, hospitality of any sort, in a restaurant, people who work in a supermarket, like you, they tend to not be wanting to engage with warmth anymore because of how many people that they see due to their poor working conditions, the fact they're not getting paid enough. In the same way, like when I was teaching or whatever, anything like that, like, you get burnt out because you're not getting paid enough. You're not being looked after enough. You're mentally like fatigued. It means your ability to be empathetic to someone's struggle is harder. Pretty much what I'm getting at is the working condition and the modern notion of a working week is killing our ability to empathize and be compassionate.
I mean, there's a huge teaching crisis, right? Like teaching job crisis of the number of people who last in teaching is incredibly, is way worse than it was 20 years ago. You know, it's a, I think a lot of people faced with the reality of what it's like are, say, you know, go from being like really interested and wanting to engage with this kind of Yes, service, yes, although like that's not how I picture it in my brain, but yeah, the word like service is correct there. To education or to the well-being of children and so on is just ends up being like cut out of them brutally by a kind of setting that actively is not intended to is not interested in the core reasoning for why education is important, like effectively like the lack of compassion, because maybe that's actually a wrong statement of it, but the lack of a lack of compassion in like that looks towards grades versus the strong compassion that looks towards like individual well-being and improvement and trying to build a society that is, you know, that understands, is knowledgeable, and has, you know, and has a bunch of people who have like unique older role models that are people that they have experienced like one-to-one and not in a purely like parasocial way, for example. That they can go like, yes, this person inspired me in this way or whatever. Like that whole dream, I think, is being proven is maybe an unfortunate word to just be like an illusion in terms of the way the system is run. Like, and as a result, people are like coming in and then just getting like knocked down left, right, and center for it. And I mean, it's crazy. And you know, it definitely makes me, as a person who at one point in their life and is still kind of has at many times like felt that I might want to do teaching in the future. It does like kind of scare me a little bit and scares me away from maybe that form of that form, or like having to, or I think to myself, like, if I do that sort of thing, I'm going to have to actively look outside of mainstream in order to, you know, in order to find like a particular, in order to find an example or like a scenario in which that teaching job would in fact be, you know, would be appreciated correctly, you know, and would actually be impactful in the way it needs to be, as opposed to just following like the very, to following like these incredibly like conveyor belt systems, forms of teaching. Yeah, and again, like they can't, like, how can they, you know, how can they look after all these kids at once? It's like, you know.
Yeah, it's just the thing, like the idea of like, you know, teaching, and the reason why there's a teaching crisis is because they're still not being paid enough, and education is a noble profession, and if you're a teacher, you're getting, you know, 30 to maybe 50,000 per year, and some even less actually. And there's a lot of people say the holidays are good, but the holidays aren't that good. The reason why the holidays aren't that good, for example, is because you have to go on holiday when everybody else is on holiday, which means everything is really expensive. We're going to discuss Amsterdam in a minute, but that was the cheapest thing I've done in a while because, well, it was cheaper to fly in that time because it was during school. So it was easier to organize. It was easier to do everything. So a lot of money goes into that. And then you end up struggling with just the general constant necessity to be an emotionally stable person and to hold up young people's emotions, but also to be able to instill discipline, but also to do that for 30 plus kids.
Yeah.
And that's primary school. In others, if you go to secondary, more like 100 plus kids, because if you teach different subjects, you have different classes in different years. So similar to being a GP in a way, you can't give everyone your full dedicated time because there is no time, because you have to do something in a very set way.
Mm.
But yeah, anything else?
I suppose I'm just thinking about my own job in this scenario because I've talked before about being in a situation where I've like looked upon someone and kind of alienated them, or alienate's the wrong word, but like looked at them and kind of stopped being interested in trying to understand them and my own frustration for what I both have to do in my role and and just the amount to which I have to engage with these people, and specifically when I'm put in the position where I have to do that for an extended period of time without like an ability to have a break and you know, all of this stuff. Those are the moments where I can look at someone and truly for a second completely forget that they're a real human being that has just come into a shop looking for something and whatever. And there's a huge disconnect that occurs, right? And keep in mind, these people are local people, and people aren't like, you know, coming from fucking elsewhere in the country or something like that. They're from the area. And yet that is not at all the experience that I would have. Like, I think some people who have worked in the same place for a long time can begin to, or like knew them beforehand, tend to have an experience of that. But I found it incredibly difficult to truly begin to create relationships with people, you know, even in the most like casual way sometimes. And it took like a person who was, you know, particularly themselves very like forward facing in that regard to be able to make it easier for me to even notice them as a person. You know what I mean? Like, ultimately, we're not even talking about like social engagement here. We're just literally talking about like my ability to recognize that they are just a decent person, as most people are. Most people are fine. Like, most people are not shitty people to interact with, but that I couldn't see as just like one of many, right? And that's just an unfortunate reality of. It's just an unfortunate effect of the way that, you know, we're cut down to the barest few to create all of the fruit necessary. Like, and it's very different to this overall, like my experience of all of this. But I think that very much that relationship with people is not actually. It's so much more of it, I think, has little to do with just the number of people itself, and more to do with the expectation of what that action with that person will look like. I could interact with like 100 people, or I could interact with 1,000 people. The difference is with the 1,000 people, it's less to do with how many, and it's to do with what's expected of me in terms of like speed and so on, right? What's expected of me in terms of how I engage with my ability to engage with that. But if you make that 500 all of a sudden, then, you know, actually you could actually have much more of an interaction. I'm not saying it's going to be amazing, but it's certainly better. And the more you do that, the more that's true. And even if you're having to act fast, you can still act in a way that feels, largely speaking, that it's the requirement for you to meet these like goals, necessary goalposts that are constantly shifting and becoming more and more like arcane to follow along all at once. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're doing impossible things at the same time. And truly across the board, everyone that I interact with at my work and when I interact with other people, and you see like people in the same job doing like, you know, different people but in the same job, and you see how they interact, you can see where one person has chosen to choose one particular aspect of their job that they are going to focus on, and another person who has chosen another bit to focus on. And one of those things will be biased by the system than the other, more likely. Or even if they're both equally as done, they will both be getting a bollocking about it. You know, like they're both going to get told off, even though they're both doing the thing they need to do, but they can't do both equally because it's not easy at the very least. Not without, again, facing detriments to yourself. But yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Cool. It is now time for the journal. So in the journal this week, we have everything. Everything's happening. Everything's happening.
Yeah, it's been a while, so we'll go over a few things.
Jesus. Okay, so I'm going to set the scene. We went to Amsterdam, and before Amsterdam, I had to meet Joe at his house. So then myself, Joe, Kess, and I could get driven to the airport. And then I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Such a bare setting of the scene.
Because you have the meat.
Yeah, you arrive and the discussions had been happening the night before and earlier in that day.
Because we're going away to Amsterdam for Kess's stag do. Our good mate is getting married.
Right.
It is a stag do. That is it. We've never done a stag do before.
Nope.
So yeah, this is it.
Yeah. And the day before, I'm checking everyone in, so that happens. But then I notice that there's a problem with my passport. It's saying I have to check in at the airport. It's like, okay, a bit weird. It seemed to specifically be me. Okay, that's interesting. And I started to worry personally because I knew that there was problems around related to like expiry dates and traveling into Europe. But previously, when I checked, it was not a problem. I'd done like calculations in my head. I worked out what would need to happen. Again, I when I retell this story every time, I never know if like multiple different things could have happened. I know I looked into it. I don't know like whether I just purely made a mistake, whether there was just certain information that was incorrect, whether I in fact realized that something needed to be done and then forgot it later on, and post that had rationalized that actually nothing needed to be done. But surprise, surprise, Alex arrives, and the night before we had been chatting about it, and it seemed to be that while it was within an expiry date to actually travel into the European Union from Britain, from the UK, you have to have it within like outside of like 3 months of the expiry date. And in certain places, I think it's even 6 months. So if there is any, just as a little heads up to anyone, if there is any, if you have the time, and I've had my passport done again, and it took less time than they said. Obviously, it could take, I think, like 3 weeks or something, but it didn't actually take that long. I've got it now. Then, you should just do it. I think it took like less than 2 weeks in my case. But like it is worth doing, like from your expiry date. It's completely the part about this that's annoying. In fact, I'll finish the setup of this story. Is we started to look into this. We started worrying. The next day, Alex arrives. I tell him I might not even make it to Amsterdam. We're just going to go and see what they say, and then Lord only knows we end up at the airport. Lord only knows, that's not even the right phrase. So we go, and there we are, and it felt like okay, nothing's been said so far as like our passport's being looked at, and then the beep goes off, and I'm like, in my head, like, not trying to seem like outwardly like anything's going on. I'm just like, fuck, I think that's me gone. I think I'm not going to this holiday anymore. And unfortunately I was turned away. And you have to have appointments already set to go to the passport office and all that stuff to try and get a temporary one. And even then, I think there are only certain cases in which they can give you a temporary one, and blah blah blah, emergency passport stuff. Regardless, I don't go. So you guys got to experience that, and I didn't. Which I wouldn't say it wasn't a knock against me. Like, I definitely was very upset about it, although I was incredibly happy that it only affected me and didn't affect you two. Although I have now come to recognize that me being around is something that people enjoy. So there was a sad reality to me not going, which was me not being there actually happens to affect your experience of everything.
100%.
So it's like, fuck, man. Like it's such a simple thing that I felt, again, rationalizing it. I remember looking at this and thinking it will be fine. And I was also going through a really bad time mentally at the time. My mental health was really poor. That was during the big, like, I'm not talking to anyone for a long period of time that we've talked about already. Earlier on in the year, and so who knows what happens during those periods of time? Who fucking knows what is the the explanation for everything. But yeah, it wasn't great. I came away from it at the end of it feeling, I think, I don't know if this is an anxiety. I think this is just a general thing, and obviously I do have like, but I don't know whether this has like helped my anxiety at some level. That having experienced this, I now feel like I've experienced some of the worst things that can happen in a situation like this. Like I've literally experienced I didn't get to go on the holiday because I didn't get my passport sorted out. Which is like, it's such an obvious big thing to happen. And it's like the thing that you worry that's going to happen, that you fuck up something when you sort your holiday stuff out. And then I'll tell you what, like the experience of actually having fucked up, the world isn't over as a result, but there is a real effect. Obviously, there's a real consequence. But I think in a weird way, what I tried to take from it was actually it's not as bad as you think it is. So the anxiety, at least, is not necessary. Because I don't think that the anxiety made me a person who was actually better at dealing with and organizing everything. In fact, it didn't. I know that. Because, ultimately, if I had my mind in better order, I think I would have made a much grander effort to kind of sort this out and organize myself and look into what was actually possible, making sure everyone else was fine, making sure I was fine. I am slightly salty about the fact that I pre-put all of our information in, and at that point it didn't check whether or not there was going to be any issues, and it was only when I actually checked in that it said that I had issues. So I'm a bit salty about that. I wish it had told me when I first did it.
I
would
thought
have been
it
nice.
would have said something. I thought when you checked in, it would have been like, oh, okay, unable to check in due to a passport expiry.
Yeah, well, checking in is literally the last thing you do, right? Or I think that there are some services, or depending on what time you book a flight, you can do it like a certain time period beforehand. But a lot of the time, but like in our case, we could have printed off our tickets and gone there with our tickets, and didn't require having to get some from them because we had checked in already. It's like the last thing you do. I think the reasoning has something to do with just like, it's the closest, it's within a time period of the thing, but so it's like more accurate to what's actually going to happen on the day, if that makes sense. But yeah, so when I initially just pre-put the information in that would then be used for the check-in later, there was no check that it made on behalf of the information I put in. It didn't then give me a warning, which would have again been very nice. But yeah, it didn't put that effort in, unfortunately. So yeah, it's not it's not great, but yeah, there's a certain relief, I guess you can say. A silver lining I take out of it is that I genuinely sort of came away from it thinking I've experienced probably one of the most embarrassing things to happen in this kind of scenario. I mean, luckily you got there. The place was there. I'd organized everything so that you had somewhere to live, somewhere to stay. Another friend ended up meeting you there and staying there instead, which was cool because it even felt like it even felt like the size of the place and everything didn't feel like it went to waste or anything like that, because at least there was still another person there instead. And basically I just wasted money on the airplane ticket for me personally. That's kind of how I view it now. And again, I am happy that you got to go. Again, sad that I didn't get to go, and not even for me, but for you, because there was stuff that we could have done, and it would have been I know it would have been a more fun time, but even that, like saying that alone is a testament to some better mental health situation. For me as a whole, like understanding that like I mean something and have impact in that way.
Yeah, the first thing we said was like, it's not really a stag do. I think the first thing I said to Cass was we need to do a stag do plus.
Right.
Because like we have to just do it again. Like we can enjoy ourselves, but we have to do it again, because there's no point in, we're not going to go crazy, just me and him. Because we're two men in like we're two men who aren't really interested in dating anybody, so we have no one to pick up. We
I like that's your.
And I use the word men like loosely in my case sometimes, you know. So it's just like, here's the thing: we're at a point where there's nothing for us to really like. We're having fun and getting drunk and all that stuff is like good if there's a group of people who like are doing that stuff. But with just us two, and we're two mild-mannered individuals. Like, we're a blend of timidity / extrovertedness, which is only really applicable in certain situations. And sometimes I'll say requires other people to unlock. So then, and often or not, you are like the more like socially expressive person out of us three, in a way.
Mm.
And that unlocks like the same thing in us, I think. And even when like our Lord Savior Toga came out,
Praise be to God.
Like me and Kids having fun anyway, but having Toga along as well added to that because there's a third person as well, which meant like, but in a way it felt like Toga should have been there with you.
Yeah,
so it's like that's what it felt like. It felt like there was a Joe-shaped hole missing the entire time. Just to say that.
I wish I could see what a Joe-shaped hole looks like. I think that's an interesting concept, even on its own. Like, what is a hole that looks like you, like yourself? Like, what does that look like? And I think
it felt
probably
like we didn't do mushrooms or anything like that, right? and we didn't feel like it was something that we could really do because, well, that's kind of why we wanted to go out there, and why you were there. That was like our main thing. Now I'm going to go back out to Amsterdam for a third time. I've been twice now. I'm going to go out for a third time, probably a fourth and fifth in the next few years anyway. I really like the city. And like I went out for a little walk to Albert Heijn. My favorite store, my joint favorite store, paired with Decathlon. And I went for a nice peaceful walk out there, and I was really enjoying just like, you know, being in like a quieter Amsterdam, because again, it wasn't packed with kids. It felt very chilled out. Like I just enjoyed it, and I just had a really like sat by the canal by myself. I was like, oh, Kessis and Toga are back. They're just chilling out. They're having naps because the girl got out later. We're gonna go out to the red light district and all that stuff. I was like, cool. And I just it felt like I would go for that walk and you would say, yeah, I'm coming with, for example. Because like you're not a big napper either. You can nap, but like it's not something that you tend to do.
No, it's normally something forced upon me. It's not something I normally choose.
Yeah. So it's like cool. And it's like little things. I think, you know, we would have definitely done a lot more. Oh, Kessis bought so much weed and he didn't smoke any of it.
Oh yeah, you told me about that.
It's like you just like I couldn't do it. So I ended up smoking more than I've ever smoked ever. And like, because here's the thing. Normally, a whole like a joint will last me like a week and a bit, plus sometimes. Like, there's one I had today, and I've had it for 2.5 weeks. Also, because I don't smoke, drink, or do anything like to excess really at all, pretty much ever. But now, at the start of every single month, I don't do any of those things at all until like the 15th. And that had to be negated, of course, because we were in Amsterdam. Jesus Christ, I got back and I was like, I can barely kick a ball straight. I was so out of sorts. Like, it's like a permanent state of daze for like a good couple of days. Like, it was definitely an experience. I'll be talking and I'll be like, no one's reacting to what I'm saying. No one ever listens to me. And I realize I'm not actually talking. Like, oh,
you're just
shit.
speaking in your own head.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. I've only really come back to reality like 6 days ago. Like I've been out of sorts. In that time I also turned 28. Oh, damn, I'm old. He's old. He's finished. I'm officially at the age where like, in my football career, clubs are thinking about my replacement.
Right, yeah.
They're like, oh, is that kid in the academy? Is he any good? Because he's getting on now. He's going to be. Ooh, the peak is coming. A couple of years, he's going to be a shell of what he used to be. Ooh, that's what they're looking at me right now. Or I am about to make a big money move to like a massive club for like £60 million and flop. So he just couldn't handle the league, So yeah, I got some cool gifts from cool people, and I hate my birthday, so that's it.
Yeah, I didn't say shit. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's your birthday, but because we talk about it. And that was also like a nice aspect of just with the wedding and the do, it was meant to also be like your birthday thing as well. So God forbid, all of it all together.
We'll do a stag do plus.
We will. We'll have to do something.
We don't even need to go to Amsterdam, but I think so. I want to go to Amsterdam again.
It is expensive.
It is. I want to go to Amsterdam again, though. I like the place. I'm thinking about going with my other thread. My other thread? What the fuck? My other friend.
I mean, I will go because I will have to go someday. Like, there's no question. I'm
thinking if we go with our other friend, then you can come as well.
Yeah.
Because they're cool. They can handle it. So yeah, that's it really. Yeah. I'm sorry, I kind of went off a bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Speaking of age, just because that's what you brought up, like wedding is now a thing.
Yes, it is.
And it will be happening very shortly. So yeah, everything's sort of sorted out. It's really weird, actually. To be fair, I said this because I can't wait for this to be over because not out of like a oh god, all of like oh I hate this thing, all of that. I'm not a wedding person generally, but that's not the reason. I'm invested in it because my friends are involved. But I just sort of there's so many things to weddings that are just weird. Like there are so many traditions and like weird sort of caveat things, expectations, like we were talking about expectations before the podcast started, that just really set me the wrong way. And it's like and just from a this is one of those things where I am quite bad, which is that like there are certain, like I get that sometimes like you do things because other people will appreciate them, like you do something you don't want to do because another person might enjoy it or whatever. But I have to admit that like there is something about weddings a lot of the time that there are aspects to weddings and weddings in and of themselves that I'm just so like not interested in whatsoever, that everything about this experience is me just going like I want to please like X person and Y person, like that's it, and I want to, and that's truly all it comes down to. But then that requires me engaging with this other thing which is so alien to me, and doing things I'm not good at, and in and of itself, it's been a learning experience, like to be fair, like that is what that's done, not doing stuff that you're good at and things like that. You do get a bit of it. But yeah, I will be happy when this is over. And, happy for the fact that, I'll be happy at least for what it means. I am happy for, I am happy for it all. And I truly am looking forward to the day itself. And I'm looking forward to hanging out with my friends in the same way that I was going to in Amsterdam. I can't wait to do that. I'm looking forward to the thing itself in many ways, but everything around it and everything that it is so bizarre and alien to me that it's just kind of like I'll be glad when this is over and I don't have to think about this. Hopefully for the rest of my life. That obviously won't be the case, but if that could happen to be true, that absolutely I will never have to think about this again. I will be perfectly happy with that. I'm not a wedding person. Some people are, have that thing in their heart that allows them to do things for other people in that way that I do not have, or maybe they just appreciate things about weddings that I don't know. Yeah, I'll say I'll say it's a strength of character of other people rather than saying that like, oh, I just don't get it, or like, or they get it, like, because that's making it seem like there's no shortage on my end. But like, it is one of those things where it's like, I can't wait for it to be over.
I've never been to a wedding, so
You've never been to a wedding? Oh my
nope.
god!
There's no love in my life. Nah, it's more like I just don't like.
I didn't know that.
No one connected to me has been married, so
yeah. This, to be fair, this is the
recently.
first wedding we've gone to, which is like our age group, our friends kind of thing. This is it's always been family that I have some connection, sometimes very little connection with, right?
Yeah, so I've been to like not been to anything. No weddings or nothing. So it's like this is a change for me. When Kestis told me that the whole thing will last like just under an hour, I was like, good.
The ceremony part? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, good, but a part of me also wonders why that takes an hour. Like, there's a lot. I'm just like, oh, like, you're gonna speak for like 7 minutes or whatever, Joe, and then surely they just go, yeah. So, do you like this guy? Yeah. Do you like this girl? Yeah.
That's not the order that things are happening. I'm not speaking at all until way later than that. I'm speaking when we're like hanging out, ready to like eat and party. Like that's the situation. I'm not there during the ceremony. I'll be standing there, but I'm not like going to say anything.
I thought you were going to grab a microphone and be like, okay, so, you
Let me tell you why these people should be together.
Yeah, you better name him Joe Jr. Yeah, that's all I'm saying. So why take an hour long then?
Ceremony stuff can be like that. Also, I know at like my I know that at my like cousin's wedding that it was like they were in the back of the church like signing, like the wedding paper stuff for like ages. I remember that taking a long time as well. And then afterwards everyone will like come outside of the venue. There'll be lots of picture taking, people chatting to each other, like people who might have some relationship or know, okay, I should go talk to that person because this is my child's, wife's dad, or, something like that. You have those interactions as well. And then it's only, I know what you mean. Like, why does it take that long? But like, the whole thing of a wedding is very much about ceremony. So it's like it's by its nature, there must be some pageantry might be the wrong word, but like kind of thing like that. There must be some kind of element to that. But yeah, I won't talk about the next thing because time is of the essence, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And to be honest, there will be way more to talk about next time we come back.
Exactly that.
Afterwards on this topic. So
that being said, choo choo! It's time for recommendation station. Joe, go.
Libraries. Genuinely, because recently I've gone on the YouTube no YouTube kick again, and I cannot express how wonderful libraries are as a place to go to like for, even though I suppose this makes sense. Yeah, I don't have like an office space at home, and I don't work at a place that's an office. Like I don't have that kind of experience of like engaging with a computer, for example, in a less casual environment. Libraries can be that way, and in general, you're not like paying to use these things for the most part. Depends on the library a little bit, but my library is like pretty good about that. Worcester Library is a really nice one. And on top of that, like I've recently borrowed a bunch of books on different languages that I'm interested in learning. I live with a Polish family and didn't learn Polish for fucking over a year, so I've started learning more recently, and that's been really nice. It's actually been really nice chatting with them about different words and grammar and all that stuff, and getting an actual like understanding and being able to even say like, actual phrases, or well, phrases is maybe a bit pushing it at the moment, but like just words, just simply being able to say like, arbeta mintowa, when you're trying to say like mint tea, for example, or like, I don't know, what's another example? Like being able to say, chodź tu to the dog in order to say, come here, and things like this, just like simple little things that are actually really nice, and it's given me an appreciation of the language, and they do speak Polish a lot, so it's been really nice. But the point is that, like, and obviously I know online resources exist for some of these things, but for me personally, genuinely, there is a big difference when I have something I can physically use to do that. And it really does remind me of some of the best parts about like education and learning and personal development when I get to just go to a library and use everything to my heart's desire, pretty much, and not worry. And at least I do go to a especially impressive library, but most of the time everyone is very like supportive of you being there for whatever reason it might be. So yeah, and also they should just get a lot more love, because they're a great system that is helpful for many different kinds of people.
Yeah, I really like that, actually. It's a really good suggestion. I need to go to the library and look what's there again. My recommendation is We Have Ways of Making You Talk. A part of me thinks that I did recommend this already, but maybe I didn't. It's a World War II podcast hosted by James Holland and Al Murray. Yes, that Al Murray, the pub landlord and all that stuff. Two really engaging hosts, and they discuss everything World War II. They recently had a series on VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, and they go through the process of the day, how it happened, the months leading up to it, as well as everything that happened, how they signed the treaties, how they signed a formal recognition of surrender, and all the different conflicts that were happening in and around the time. Like, the eventual encirclement of Berlin is really well told, and it really discusses the shift and the tides changing in the war as well. Because long story short, whenever people say, we have to admit Hitler was a good leader, you can really cuss them down and say, you're a fucking idiot. And so was Hitler. Because he bottled World War II in a historical fashion. Like, generationally fumbled the bag. And it comes down to major key decisions that he fucked up. And it kind of highlights just how poor the notion of Nazism is anyway. So the fact that we have people in modern day society right now being like, oh, he is the best, oh my goodness. Well, it kind of shows their intelligence levels when they go, well, he is the lead that we need. We need someone like him. No, he's generationally a failure. Like, didn't even win the majority. I don't think he won many. He was given power as well. Like, there's nothing remotely good about his run. Oh, what about the economy? If you have a recession, there has to be a recovery. So it's gonna get better for whoever's in charge, whether they like it or not. How did the economy end for Germany? Enough said. So, that's my recommendation. We Have Ways of Making You Talk is a podcast on any place you can find podcasts and all that stuff. But yeah, that's it, and that's that. We are now going to take 2 steps to the rear and get out of here. We're in the wind. See ya.
Goodbye.
How do you say bye in Polish?
I tried to think of it, but off the top of my head, I've actually forgotten.
Jesus Christ. Cheesy pips, man.